I think about a CEO in Austin who runs a pretty diverse company. Most of his management team members don't share his faith. And I went and met with his exec team once. Like, hey, so how do you handle knowing that the CEO is such he's pretty into Jesus? And they said, you know what? His faith has proven to be a blessing to us, not a burden to us, because I know it means he wants more for us, not from us. And it caused him to have the highest level of dignity and respect we've ever experienced. Never felt like someone genuinely loved me so much. And his commitment to doing what is right and making sure this business takes care of people, it's why I'm here. And so while I don't agree or share his faith, I'm inspired by it.
Well, welcome back to another episode of Good Business. Guys, I am so excited to have Mike Sharrow, the CEO at C12, onto the show today. Mike is he's making an impact, and his entire team is making a huge impact in business around the world. And I'm excited to chat about that today. So Mike, thanks so much for carving out some time to stop by the studio and chat today.
Been looking forward to making this happen for a while.
Yeah, it has been a little while.
Yeah, we've been trying to match calendars and geographies. So
yeah, well, I'm glad that we can make it happen. Well, Mike, I'd love it if you could just introduce yourself to our audience and let them know a little bit about you and about C12. What's your background?
So we're here in Austin right now, but I grew up in Alaska, so a little northwest of here.
Just a little.
a little northwest of Texas. Grew up and did an interesting journey we'll talk about a little bit later. I'm married to Jackie for almost 22 years now. Wow. I'm a girl dad, got 2 teenage girls, or 13 and 10, almost 2 teenagers. So I'm in a world of pink, which means I worn tiaras and tutus and know way too many musical songs and Jane Austen quotes. And I became a passionate follower of Jesus as a kid and kind of spent a lot of my childhood, adolescence, and kind of early adulthood wrestling with what does it mean to be a follower of Jesus and to be effective and successful in vocation. And I knew I wanted my life to matter and was kind of obsessed with the question of purpose from a young age. And that's just kind of driven me to a bunch of different things on my resume into this world today. And so ironically, I spent a bunch of my early 20s wrestling with faith and work and identity and vocation and man, I love business and building stuff, but I also want to be all about things that matter forever. And now I get to be in a business helping people like me figure that out. So I lead a business that is all about helping Christian business owners and CEOs who are followers of Jesus and want to build great businesses, but want to do it with an eternal perspective, a greater purpose. And we do that by operating small groups of like-minded peers with professional coaches all over the world. Like we're in the U.S., we just launched our second group in South Africa last week. Wow. And we're looking at launching in Egypt this summer. Whoa. But so I would have never guessed when I was a 20-something wrestling with identity and vocation that I'd then one day be CEO of an organization that is helping thousands of people live that stuff out. Wow. And go employ 1 million people and hopefully change the world. So.
Well, it seems like you are on your way to doing that. So how did you actually end up at C12? Like what was?
I don't know.
Yeah. How did that happen?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Stories look so cool in retrospect. Like in the moment when you're walking in them, they don't look nearly as pretty and clear.
I completely understand.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So looking back, I'm like, wow, look what God did. He wove this wonderful story. It's just a series of yes, God steps. I would say I'd have to go back. I was living in Chicago working for a big company, publicly traded company. I was having my first bit of corporate success, and that's where I had that kind of faith work tension and was asking God, like, hey, do I need to get out of here? God put some mentors in my life and kind of opened my world up to this idea of an integrated life. And that's what kind of actually helped me fall in love with business as not a barrier to a life of impact or ministry fruitfulness, but actually my context. So I stayed at that for years, moved to Texas, was involved in a local church, and a church that we were attending asked me to come on staff and actually help lead the church and go through a bunch of different things. And so I took a 60-70% pay cut and did that for a couple of years. Wow. And found myself missing the ministry of business. And so I started a company, started a few nonprofits, got involved in a bunch of different things. And a buddy came to me and said, hey, I'm joining this thing called a C12 group. Would you like to join one with me? I didn't know what it was. I actually thought it sounded like a cult or a weird club. And I thought a lot of times Christian business things are weird.
Yeah.
So honestly, he was like, hey, I'm doing this cool Christian business. I was like, good for you. God bless you. No, thank you. And he went, but you love Jesus. You love business. Why wouldn't you do this? And I said, because oftentimes those things are either hokey, where like you put a giant verse or a symbol, but you don't really run a good business. Or people just run kind of a moral business and they give a little money away and call that, whatever. And I was like, I don't got time for that. And he's like, no, this is a different group. This is different. And he drew some Venn diagrams. And anyway, I said, if I go to a meeting, will you stop bugging me? And he said, yes. I'm like, okay. So I went to a meeting in July 2010, joined August 2010, and drank the Kool-Aid. So I was a member for a while of a new group. And then I became a chair. So that's our full-time role leading groups locally. And then we're a for-profit model. So I actually, with a friend, bought the area franchise and actually led an area for a while. And about 8 years ago, the parent company is going through a succession plan, and I applied for the role knowing I was the youngest, probably least qualified, least educated, least pedigreed candidate, but they'd probably interview me. And I want to get before the board and just challenge them on some stuff. And they took a wild leap and literally at the end, I was like, I feel like I would have been the least qualified guy you had. And looked through the list of candidates like, yeah, you were. Yeah, you were. But we feel like you're who God called to do this, so we're going to take a chance on that. Wow. So that was about 8 years ago.
Wow. Okay, so a lot has happened in the past 8 years then,
a
right?
lot.
So before we get into that, tell me a little bit more about what the background is on C12. So the inspiration behind that. Obviously, you've touched on it a little bit, but I'd love to go a little bit deeper if I could.
Yeah, so I didn't found the company.
Yeah.
A little over 30 years ago in Florida, there was a bunch of Christian business owners who were in community together, different kinds. There was a guy named Buck Jacobs, and he had come to Christ as an adult and was discipled by his best friend running a company together. So his first Bible study was a workplace Bible study. His first place of being challenged to live out his faith was actually in a business. And so he didn't really know discipleship apart from business. And then he found out that's actually not normal, that most people don't connect those two. And so he'd always had this passion for, man, you got to realize business is where you get to live out your faith. Business is where you get to work out your faith. I like to say that business is a gymnasium for your faith, where you actually get to work out what do you actually believe, what matters. And so in the 90s, some guys were saying, said, you know what we need? All of us are in these business peer groups. We got our consultants, we got our industry groups, you got your missions groups, you got your small groups. Man, you can only be in so many in your BSF groups. Wouldn't it be cool if there was a group that was for professional business owners, that was rigorous on business, but also had an eternal perspective, but also had a biblical worldview, that had accountability? What if we'd merge that into one? That would save a lot of time, and it'd bring a lot of pieces together. And they said, Buck, you should do that. And so he did an experiment called a Christian 12 group. Let's get 12 Christian business owners that don't compete, meet once a month, work in the business, work on ministry, work on integrated propositions, and see what happens. And it worked. And dozens joined. And it was called the Christian 12 group, and people started calling it the C12 group. But the whole idea was, I think there's this massive lie that causes most people to live unsatisfied lives of you got your era of success, do whatever your job is, make money, build things, and then make as much significant impact as you can in the margins, as though you can separate those two. And they kind of live in suspended animation, not knowing that God cares about business and business matters, and every hour of every day should have an eternal perspective to it. And so the whole idea was there is incredible joy to be found if people knew what it looks like to actually do this. And business isn't just a funder of ministry. It is a platform for changing the world and a force for good. I mean, I keep seeing good on your jacket, and I'm like, yes, it's good.
Couldn't agree more.
Yes. I'm hyping your brand every other statement. So
no, I love it. I'm a marketer, so I mean, naturally, no, I couldn't agree more. I think when it comes to running a business, we've got to have more than just the P&L and the balance sheet in mind, because it's something that God's given us to steward, and that's how honestly good business came about. Is because I feel like when it comes to running a business, there's been historically so much emphasis on you got to run your business really, really, really well. Here's the EOS framework. Here's StoryBrand. Here's all of these different tools, but that's all focused on just growing and improving.
That's right.
the business, but the business is going to be gone. It's probably not going to be around. Maybe it'll be around when I die. Maybe it'll still be around when my kids go to see the Lord. But it's not eternal. And there are so many more things that are far more important that God can use business to bring about. And so my wife and I, our mission is to use Good Agency, which is our marketing agency, and Good Studios to really just be a catalyst for change. And so that's one of the things that C12 has consistently just come to mind. And right now it's just a matter of capacity why I haven't joined yet, except for the fact that I know that at some point I'm going to just have to say, hey, I have to make time for it. But
we'll work on your excuses later.
There you go.
I can unpack that.
But all that to be said, I mean, I couldn't agree more with the heart behind that. And
I think so. The language we're trying to use, because it's easy to slip into what I found is some dualism, is the fancy language for when you kind of separate sacred and secular things. Is that it's not just like business can empower ministry and business is a platform for ministry, but we actually think even more deeply to say like
it is ministry.
Business as a ministry, like how I hire and fire should have ministry infused into it and should be done to the glory of God. And how I handle contracting and pricing and branding and marketing and how I like the whole thing. And a friend of mine wrote a book last year called 93X, and his whole point was that the average person spends 93 times the amount of time in a business than they ever do in church. And so the average person spends less than 1.7 hours a month in church, but 160 hours in business at work. And so you have like 93 times the influence of people just when you think about your employees that even like a conventional church would have.
Wow.
And then your chance to shape vendors and suppliers and industries and communities, it's massive. So yeah, I've just been enthralled with the incredible impact potential every business has.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how you balance that. How do you navigate this this conundrum that you highlighted earlier about business profitability, being gospel centered?
Yeah.
How do you do it all at the same time?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Yeah, so it does become a false dichotomy. So there's a lot of false dichotomies out there. Success and significance, as though you can do one or the other. Like, well, I don't think you can be a successful Christian if you're not being faithful and fruitful to what God's called you to be. So I think that's an artificial idea.
Yeah.
And I think significance, if you're not excellent and good at it, is pretty hard to achieve either. So I think that's fake. In business, we like to use the language, no margin, no mission. So like you can't have a high impact business if you don't have a successful business. And so profitability, margins matter and are a good validation that you're creating value. So all those things are there. But profitability, money, it's morally neutral. It comes down to like what's motivating you and what are you actually doing. And so part of what it requires is us to go back and go like, well, who am I? Why do I exist? Like, what is the purpose of Clay? What's the purpose of Mike? So I've got my own mission statement. And what's the business's purpose? And how do I understand it? And if that's clear, then from that, realizing it's not A or B, it's A and B. Like that's just one part of a balanced scorecard. We like to use something we call the 5-point alignment matrix. We'd say at the center of every business, you should think about what is the mission, vision, values of that company. And that should be kingdom influenced. It should be, it should have the aroma of Christ in that. And then every business has got your money issues, your revenue cycle, your people stuff, your operations, and then should have ministry. And all those things just should be held under the tension of, are all those things excellent, good, godly? Are they best practices? Are they reflecting biblical principles? All those things matter. And when it's put in a balanced scorecard, it means I don't neglect my bank and cash flow because I'm just all about ministry stuff, but I don't ignore ministry because I'm all about cash flow. It's a collective engine towards this clear purpose. And so when those things are all held as all mattering to God, that changes everything. I think it's easy, you used the word steward earlier. So it's easy to say like, okay, I'm a steward. Well, that literally means I believe I don't own this. So if you and I both believe like you don't actually own the good agency, God owns everything. You don't give him anything. You just get to participate with him. Then I can't really you can't be successful at running the good agency unless you're running it the way the owner wants. So it creates this kind of daily, like every moment matters, every part of the business matters. And my balancing of priorities is handled with that submission and a different kind of scorecard process. So
Yeah.
it's not A or B. That's what creates kind of bad businesses done in the name of Jesus, or greedy businesses that then say, well, I'm going to give God some money later. So that's what makes it good. Like, no, it's got to be integrated.
Yeah. So what would you say, kind of jumping off of that, when you're first assessing a business, and someone's coming in and I don't know, they spend a day together. What should someone expect? I mean, what's evaluated? What's looked at, and then how do you coach them through that? What is that process like?
Sure. So when someone joins us, a C12 business forum, so these are once a month meetings. They're 7 hours long. They're a full day away from the business. We are every month reporting out on our accountability, and then once a year doing a full assessment of how are all those domains of your business. So how are sales and revenue, and are you taking good care of customers? How's employee retention and care, and how are you taking care of your talent, and what's their alignment and performance? Financial cash flow statements, bank covenants, all that stuff, operations and quality and supply chain, and then looking at ministry and saying, okay, what impact are you actually having in the business, and forcing to quantify the impact potential you have in terms of people that you can show the love of Jesus, share the love of Jesus, generosity, all those kind of things. So we're quantifying all that, and then every month having to say, how are you doing at this year's goals and optimizing those pieces, but also looking at who you are, not just what you do. So there's this there's a monthly assessment and an annual assessment to go, I'm a father of 2 little girls. I'm a husband of Jackie. I'm a son of God, and God cares about who I am and how I am as much as what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so all those things get kind of brought together. So to facilitate that, every month we do content around basically like an MBA in business every year on best practices of everything from next month we're doing stuff on building trust with your customers and trust with your team, to AI and cybersecurity and strategic planning and everything in between. But also equipping us in ministry, mutual accountability to actually get the right things done. And then a chance to have other people help us look at our business through this lens, because you kind of have to reimagine the whole business when you begin thinking business as a ministry. And so each person starts at a different spot. You probably come in with strengths because you start this business with a story and a vision, but there's probably blind spots. You're like, I never even looked at that part of the business, or I didn't even know you could do that. And so that's the power of learning with peers, is you can have 12 other people go, hey, Clay, have you thought about, or why aren't you doing this? Or you say this, but you're not actually getting the result of that. And let's bring real tools and real counsel to solving those things. That's why when people join, they stay in for like 10, 15 years.
Wow.
Because it just becomes your constant board advisors to help you live out that calling.
Wow. So that obviously sounds incredible, but it also sounds pretty intimidating to go to all these other business owners and say, hey, here's everything. And you met them once, right? So what does it look like in regard to the relationships that are formed through that? I mean, it gets pretty personal. So
yeah, when I first joined a C12 group in 2010, honestly, it bothered me because I was irritated. I was trying, why am I irritated? I'm irritated because I was watching people's lives change and their businesses change more rapidly in these between once a month meetings than I saw in like the small group I had at my church or programs I was involved in that were actually just about ministry stuff. And part of it is, rarely do you as an entrepreneur ever have a place where everyone around you gets what you're dealing with because they've all got it too. You are known for who you are in business, your personal life, your impact, your all these things are kind of known by people who get it. Confidential, no conflict of interest. No one's here to buy something or sell something from you. And we're on that journey together. So when I joined that group, you asked about like relationships. Fast forward 3 years, I changed my whole estate plan. The guardian of my kids, if we ever die, became one of the people in my group.
Whoa.
The executor of my will became another person in the group. Medical power of attorney became another person in the group. Like I literally flipped my whole estate plan to be like, I trust you guys more than I trust anybody.
Wow.
Because you know me better than anybody. I know you better than anybody. It is incredibly liberating to be in a spot where everyone gets it. but then is also able to challenge each other, say, now let's go actually live it.
It's amazing.
So it's, I had a CEO from Mexico flying up for a forum once, and he went on the same thing. He's like, just, I'm pretty private. I'm not going to share anything the first day. I was like, okay, you will. And he's like, I'm not going to. And I went, we're not going to make you, but it'd be dumb not to. Yeah. And he's like, and so we get in the meeting and we're going around, and like 3 hours in, he's like, I can't believe I'm telling you guys this. Okay, this is happening in my business, and I'm wrestling with this, and I've never told anybody, and we get done, he's like, I can't believe I just shared that.
Wow.
Why? I'm like, well, because it's so liberating.
Yeah.
I had a grandmother who's not a believer. When she heard about me getting involved with C12, she's like, it sounds like AA for CEOs. And I was like,
it sure does, actually.
Kind of. Like, we all need recovery at a certain level. But yeah, it is. The hardest thing is getting someone like you to get past the excuse of busyness.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the Ecclesiastes principle of you have to stop and sharpen the axe if you want to go farther. You actually have to stop and do something, change the way you're getting there.
Yeah.
You're never going to suddenly have an extra day. But once you get there, there's like, oh, wow, this is like an oasis. Like, I have to come back every month.
I love it. I love it. All right. So let's talk a little bit more about just how this looks in the long run, and,
Sure.
and how business leaders should be responding. So obviously, I mean, I'm convicted, and rightly so. So I appreciate that. And I think it's so helpful to know that there's other business owners out there. I'm a part of a mastermind of Christian business leaders, and we meet together every other week, and it's fantastic. But it's also, we're not lifting the skirt on our finances.
Yeah.
We're just talking about problems we're having in
Sure.
team members and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So having someone to come in and to really hold you accountable, I mean, I know just from personal experience, that's how you grow. So when it comes to just the kind of problems that business leaders face on a daily basis, on an annual basis, from small things like, should I hire this person, or big things like, hey, should we sell the business? What have you seen these, you call them cohorts, or
they're forums? Yeah.
Okay, so what are these forums' response to that, and how is that helpful?
Yeah. So, I'm glad you're meeting with a mastermind group. So first of all, I think every leader, no matter what you're doing, what kind of business, you should find people to run with.
Yeah.
And like, peers are powerful. The question is just how rigorous, how structured. So anything's better than doing it alone.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
that's always great. This is an intensive program where you got a professional facilitator, you've got MBA curriculum, you've got structures and assessments and all the kind of pieces. And the reality is everything you mentioned happens every month. I mean, today in my forum, we were talking about, I'm a member of a group myself, I drive, pay dues. We were talking about everything from terminating a COO and a CRO, but when do we do that? And how do we handle this critical issue, to, okay, how do we raise $160 million for this new growth issue, to how do we handle this communication problem in a company, to how do you handle, as an entrepreneur, dealing with helping extended family members who struggle financially, and what's the boundaries on that, and what does ministry in a diverse tech company look like? I mean, these are all just daily issues that come up. So part of the deal is, if you have peers who are all sharing the true north, like what matters in life, and we're actually wrestling with truth, it's unpacking, making sure, are we answering the right question? Like, what's the question behind that? What would God say about that? Now, there's not a book of the Bible that says, here's how to do a branding agency or a studio or marketing or a tech company. So you have to be people who are actually going, okay, what does God care about this? What does God say about this? How do we challenge you with the right perspective on this? And how do we help hold you accountable to an identity question? We had someone who's today brought an issue that the group's going, hey, I think you're asking the wrong question. I think you're asking that question because you're afraid of this. And because this one thing happened years ago, you're just trying to make sure that never happens again. And you're letting that shadow kind of hijack the moment. Yeah. So, who are you in Christ, and what's the more important question today? And he's like, man, you're right. I need to get to that. Yeah. So, it's everything under the sun. And what's kind of interesting, like, I've been in my forum for 7 years now. Like every year they do a 360 with me with my executive team. They meet with my wife every year and do a 360 on me with her.
What is a 360?
Oh, so that means they're asking each of my executive team members individually, without me there, hey, what's going well in the business? What's not? How is Mike leading well? How's he not? What's the most important thing in the business right now? What's the one thing you would change? What's the thing Mike's not listening to anymore? They're asking Jackie questions about how is he as a husband, as a father? Where do you wish someone was holding him accountable? What do you wish? How could he love you better in the season? What do you see him do well? What do you wish was different about how he carried the business? They then bring all that and hold me accountable to that feedback. So I mean, that's just huge. When you've done that for years, though, you begin to just know each other.
Yeah.
Like my peers know my business. Last year, I went to them with a big idea question. I went to ask for advice. I was like, hey, I've got this great, I think all my ideas are great. I was like, I've got a great idea. Should I do A or B? And here's my rationale for both. Which is it? And they went, both are dumb.
Wow.
I went, no, which one? A or B? And like, no, both of you avoiding emotionally the right decision, which is C. And they literally like turned my world around.
Wow.
And I went and followed their counsel, and it was right.
Wow.
And I needed someone who could get in my face and be like, no, we know you. You got to deal with this. So, I mean, it's all the stuff of business.
Wow. So C12, obviously it's a pretty big commitment. So backing out a little bit.
Yeah.
So we've talked about C12. I want to talk about your thoughts on a few things because it sounds like you've coached and been coached by some really wise people. So when it comes to just cultivating leadership within an organization, I know this is a little bit of a pivot, but along the same vein, you're talking from a C12 perspective, you're talking about leaders. How do you help guide that same mindset and adoption of that same mindset that C12 instills in its CEOs or business owners?
Yeah.
How do you have that implemented into the entire organization, or do you? And what are your thoughts on that?
That's a good question. So tactically how it looks will vary based upon the size of the company.
Sure.
Yeah, so we got Peer in my group's got 3,000 employees, and we have someone who's got 16. So those are two different worlds.
Yeah.
And we do a program for helping equip like executives and VP level folks and how to equip and develop them to think this way and help execute that vision. But I think in my own business, I've got 28 employees that I support in my core business, and then we help support these 200 full-time coaches or chairs. And I've got all different levels of people and roles in my company. They can't all be in C12.
Yeah.
I can be, from the day that they join the company, casting vision that, hey, whether you believe in Jesus or not, whether you're in this kind of business role or this kind of business role, here's what I believe about you. I believe you're created with purpose. I believe that your business matters. And we're going to begin to establish rhythms of how we teach the business, operate the business, manage the business that gives me an opportunity to speak to those things and then to create a learning culture. So say, hey, I expect we're all going to be learning and growing, and I want to promote an integrated life. And so while I'm trying to live an integrated life, a lot of those tools and those wheels and those assessments, they can be about anybody. And so we share those with our company, share those with everybody, every employee gets those. I think part of the power of business to shape lives is that people are coming to work, spending 88,000 hours of their life there. What a great place to begin to say, here's what we believe about human dignity, about purpose, about what are going to be the values here. And so you can't compel everyone to be a Christian, but you can say, we're gonna operate according to these principles and values, and I'm gonna give you constant learning opportunities to grow as a leader, to grow as a manager, and use those development times to also help instill that kind of thinking and those kind of values. So I think encouraging life integration is, and that's actually one of the gifts of right now. So you think about the current generation workforce is hungry for purpose and meaning and identity and love and truth. So we should create environments where you go, hey, come, we're gonna be a factory, we're gonna do an IT shop, we're gonna be an agency, and I want the expectation that you don't just do good things, but what you become is good. I love, I think Mark Canlis, a restaurateur in Seattle, is the one I stole the language from. He said, the question he wants every employee to wrestle with is, who are you becoming here? And whether you stay here for 30 years or your career takes you somewhere else, I hope you become a better, fuller person while you're here. And so if that's the brand promise you're kind of instilling for an employee, then learning and leadership development, you have to engage in that.
Wow. I love that. So when it comes to the faith component, and you mentioned it'll be different for a 3,000 person company versus a 16 person, what would you say is kind of the tool that you've found to be most valuable in equipping those leaders to really speak in maybe more sensitive situations about their faith, or do they? What are your thoughts on that?
Unpack that for me a bit.
So let's just say this.
What's the scenario?
We've got a senior level executive at ExxonMobil, and they are essentially wanting to join C12. So they're essentially higher up in the organization, and so high that they are essentially running the organization.
Sure.
Let's just say CEO.
Okay.
How does a C12 led ExxonMobil look? What does that look like? I mean, do you guys have publicly traded companies joining? You do? Okay. So what does that look like? Because I think one of the things that just kind of the myths that I've heard, honestly, ever since growing up was, you can't talk about...
You can't do that.
You can't talk about your faith at work. Yeah, you could lose your job or you can get a lawsuit. Or, in fact, I recently, one of my good friends was fired from a publicly traded company because someone heard on Facebook about him talking about his faith. And so, I mean, there's that legitimate fear, but I know for a fact that audience right now listening in, they're running organizations with 10,000 plus members. So what would you say a C12 organization would look like? I know that's a big ask.
It's big, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a whole show. So first of all, I've met with thousands and thousands and thousands of CEOs, and I've met with tons of publicly traded ones. Most 87% of our members are privately held companies, but we do have publicly traded and private equity backed and all that kind of stuff. There is so much magnified fear of what you can't do that it greatly paralyzes us from all the things you can do. So I do think there's a big difference between you own the good agency. Okay, so you can call it what you want. You could change its colors. You can, your biggest risk is you go out of business, right? Now you got to honor the laws of the land, and you can get yourself in trouble. But you have a lot of liberty because it's your business. If you're a hired CEO, it's not your business. You're a steward, literally, to a board or investors or the public markets. And so you have to be a little different, just like Joseph wasn't the Pharaoh and Daniel wasn't the ruler of Babylon. They had influence, but they didn't have ownership and complete authority. So I do think, like, maximize what you're able to do. But I find a lot of people think that you can't do many things when really, like, you can. It's just about how you do it. So we do a lot of work to equip people legally with, like, okay, here's how you do handle this situation in employment law. Here's how you can handle it as a company. Being stupid for Jesus is still stupid. So, like, you can do dumb things. And nothing exempts you from persecution.
Sure.
But you shouldn't be prosecuted. Like, I'd love to find out more about your friend to see if I can help him with that. But for the person leading a public company or a company where they're the CEO, not the owner, no one can censure you from saying, this is, as for me and my house, this is who I am. When I was working for a publicly traded company and I was frustrated as a Christian there, my first mentor was a guy named Tony. He came to work from Apple Computers, came to our business, and he pulled me aside and said, Mike, I can tell you're wrestling with this, like, I want to be successful, but I want to be Christian. He's like, can I give you some advice? I said, yeah. And he's like, right now, focus on two things. Focus on being so genuinely in love with Jesus that you're not trying to, like, plug a program and insert a track here or there, but it's literally who you're thinking about and talk to all the time. Like, be so in love that it just oozes out of you, not because you're trying to do ministry, but it's because your mind's on Christ. He's like, so make sure you're actually abiding in him and love him like that. And then second, be so excellent at your job that there's nothing you can be criticized except for, man, that guy's kind of in love with Jesus. He's a little obsessed with that. And that was part of what he did in his position. When I watched him do a company-wide address, and someone said, hey, what would you like to do about this topic? And he said, man, I don't trust my own thoughts. The best source of wisdom I know is the oldest, most authoritative book in the world. And so here's some truth that comes out of the Bible that shapes me as a leader. And he just very organically, authentically goes like, here's what drives me on this. And he would say, you may not agree with that. That may not be your background, but this is what guides me.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty hard to criticize someone saying, bro, this is what guides me. And as a leader, you also kind of give air cover that then makes it okay for other believers there to be like, okay, maybe I won't get shot here. Can I, if you can say that, maybe I can live things out too. And if you think about, if rightly stewarded, I believe a Christian-run business should be should be the best place to work for people who think wildly differently than us. I think about a CEO in Austin who runs a pretty diverse company. Most of his management team members don't share his faith. And I went and met with his exec team once. Like, hey, so how do you handle knowing that the CEO is such he's pretty into Jesus? And they said, you know what? His faith has proven to be a blessing to us, not a burden to us, because I know it means he wants more for us, not from us. And it caused him to have the highest level of dignity and respect we've ever experienced. Never felt like someone genuinely loved me so much. And his commitment to doing what is right and making sure this business takes care of people, it's why I'm here. And so while I don't agree or share his faith, I'm inspired by it. And I was like, well, that guy's doing it right.
That's amazing.
So I think in big businesses, it's realizing your influence and testimony has to be very personal, but not private.
Yeah.
But then as you own a business, I think you not just have opportunity, you have accountability that if God's given you the privilege to own that business, then everyone who comes here should experience business done the way that'd be pleasing to him. And that requires you kind of auditing the entire operation. We like to say, if Jesus was to walk through your whole business and be like, hey, show me your accounting department. How's that working? Or show me your ops floor, or show me your whatever. Where would you be like, let's not look there. Let's
skip past this door.
Nothing back there. That's the closet. He would care about the whole operation, and we're accountable to do that. And we live in a country. I mean, we operate C12 groups in countries where it's a Muslim majority nations where sharing your faith at work is illegal. We operate in countries where this is not so luxurious. But in America, we have a tremendous freedom, tremendous liberty. And I've met with EOC commissioners. We've mapped out all of here's the do's and don'ts. And the reality is you can do incredible things. And we got publicly traded companies that are crushing. I remember asking one publicly traded company that has got chaplains, they got Bible studies, they do scholarships to Christian colleges, they take care of single moms, they do just wildly good stuff. Thousands of employees.
Wow.
I said, what's your Wall Street investor relations conversations like? How does that go? And he said, well, I tell them, listen, my duty is to be a great fiduciary and deliver you fantastic performance. I owe you dividends on your stock and a great performance. The day I don't do that, you should either fire me or sell your stock. In the pursuit of that, this is the values I'm going to live by. This is the world I'm going to try to create. And ironically, we live in a world where people like Levi's and Facebook and Google and Starbucks are unapologetic saying, we want to create a world. We want to shape a world by values. Oftentimes Christians are afraid to say, hey, we've actually got a better story to tell.
Yeah.
Let's help create a better world truly.
I love that. Well, I feel like we could keep talking for a long time, but
Probably.
But I couldn't imagine a better way to end our show. But before we wrap up, I'd love to know: is there any parting wisdom or advice that you would give to the business leaders, organization leaders that are listening in today? What would you tell them? What would you encourage them to do? And lastly, how could they connect with you?
Yeah, I would say reject the idea that you have to turn off who you are based on where you are. Yeah, I lost a lot of years of my life wrestling with, does the logo on my shirt define my identity? Or does my identity change everything about how I think about the logo on my shirt? And then once I did that, I went, okay, that sounds really cool. God, I have no idea what that looks like. I have no idea how to do that. And I found that God actually likes it when you ask those questions. And I would say we live in an era where there's incredible people to learn from, books to read, podcasts to watch, groups to join, all that kind of stuff. That journey will actually be about God wanting you to know more. He wants more for us. He doesn't want more from us. I think that's the part I also didn't realize is this is about God wanting to father me into a full, abundant, good life. And I would say get out there and find people who are asking those questions and learn together. Find people who are doing this, wrestle with it. And I'd say also be encouraged. I think it can feel lonely when you're trying to do this. You can think like, I'm crazy. I'm going to be looked at like I'm a 3 eyeballs or something. This is one of the number one search terms right now in Google. So the last 12 months have been the all-time record in the last 23 years of people searching a couple phrases. Who is Jesus? All-time record right now. How do I connect my faith and my work? All-time high. Oh. What is my purpose in life? Those are all like skyrocketing search terms right now. There's been a 100% growth if people who run businesses being involved in faith groups like C12 in the last 5 years. It's just surging right now. Wow. And so if you're out there, just know like you're not alone. God does have a purpose for your life, and it includes your business. Your business is not an obstacle. It is the platform for you living that Ephesians 2:10 destiny God has for all of us. And don't do it alone. Don't reinvent the wheel. Go Google, like, who else is wrestling with faith and work? And there's a ton of stuff out there. And embrace the adventure of it. Like, I believe God has absolutely called us to this moment in time. This is the exact moment in human history that he thought Clay should be running the good agency. This environment, politically, socially, culturally, is the perfect time for us to do business. And we just need to go figure out how to do it smart. So
I love it. Well, thank you, Mike. I really appreciate you carving some time after a full day already. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Good Business. It's been a joy. I hope you're as encouraged as I am, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week on Good Business. In the meantime, please hit that subscribe button, and if you're listening in on Apple Podcasts, give us a review. We'd love to get your feedback. We'll see you soon.